Welcome. So in today's session, we'll be looking at embryology, the development of the thyroid gland. So when you want to discuss the development of any organ, you first ask yourself, what is the embryonic origin? We'll be answering the question, what is the embryonic origin of the thyroid gland? What is the developmental sequence of thyroid gland? And what are the congenital anomalies of the thyroid gland? Welcome all. My name is Wallace Munyere. So, in the development of the thyroid gland, the development of the thyroid gland, first we start with the embryonic origin. So, what is the embryonic origin of thyroid gland? Where does it originate? It usually originates from the floor of the primitive pharynx at the dorsum of the tongue, between the tuberculum impar and the copula. We'll be looking at, I will show you a diagram of that. Then, what are the tissue of origin? At the tissue of origin, we have the endoderm, which will give us the follicular cells. Neurocrest cells will give us the parafollicular cells, and the mesenchyme will give us the connective tissue framework, the stroma. So, if you haven't seen the histologic organization of the thyroid gland, I think I have a video on that. You should see that. That was there. So we have answered the question, what is the embryonic origin? We have said the site of origin is the floor of the primitive pharynx, and the tissue of origin is the endoderm, neurocrest, and the mesenchyme. And we have stated each of the derivatives of the tissue of origin. Then what is the sequence, developmental sequence? I will start with a diagram, then I will show you, I will illustrate, I will give you a text. So we have an endodermal thickening at the dorsum of the tongue. Then it forms a depression known as the thyroglossal, the thyroid diverticulum. Then the thyroid diverticulum elongates to form a thyroglossal duct. Then at the caudal end of the thyroglossal duct, it bifurcates and to form two bifids, which usually undergo, the endoderm undergoes proliferation to form the two lobes, the two lateral lobes of the thyroid gland, which are joined by the isthmus. Remember, in the adult, the isthmus is usually overlie the second to the fourth tracheal rings. Then, apart from that, we also said that the neurocrest cells contribute to the formation of the parafollicular cells. They usually originate from the ultimobranchial body, the caudal portion of the fourth pharyngeal pouch. Then they invade the developing thyroid gland to form the parafollicular cells. So you can see this is where it usually originates here. Then it descends, first it will descend and ventral to the hyoid bone, then move behind, that is the retrohyoid position, then it will descend up to its definitive position, then that is where it will undergo bifurcation to form the two lateral lobes. Then maybe I should give you the text of that. So this is the text. You have said that the thyroid gland usually begins to develop during the third week of intrauterine life. IUL is intrauterine life as an endodermal thickening of the midline of the floor of the primitive pharynx between the tuberculum impar and the copula. This is at the root of the tongue. So remember what forms the tongue. I will also do the development of the tongue, but tuberculum impar and copula are some of the parts that will give rise to the tongue. So this thickening forms a shallow outpouching, which becomes depressed below the surface to form the diverticulum called the thyroglossal duct. Then this duct first grows downwards and slightly forwards, okay, downwards and slightly forwards across the tongue, and then descends on the front of the neck. In the neck, first it passes in front of or ventral to the hyoid bone. Then what does it do? It then winds around its lower border to become retrohyoid, and finally descends below the hyoid bone in a slight inclination to one side, usually to the left. Then by the end of the 7th week of intrauterine life, it reaches its definitive position where its tip becomes a solid mass of cells and soon bifurcates. Okay. Then the proliferation of the cells of this bifid tip of the thyroglosal duct gives rise to two lobes of the thyroid gland that are connected by the isthmus. The isthmus of the thyroid gland lies anterior to the developing second and third tracheal rings. Then I've said the parafollicular or C cells of the lateral lobes of the thyroid gland are contributed by the neurocrest cells of the ultimobranchial body. Ultimobranchial body forms the caudal portion of the fourth pharyngeal pouch. So maybe I should turn here. So an endodermal thickening, it becomes the endodermal thickening becomes deepened depression to form the thyroglosal duct. Then the thyroglosal duct, how does it descend? First, it inclines forwards and downwards. Then in the neck, it rises first ventral to the hyoid bone. Remember the hyoid bone, how it was formed? It is formed from the third and fourth pharyngeal arch cartilages. Then it then moves posterior to it, the retrohyoid position. Then it declines. It descends somewhat to the left of the midline, but lying ventral to the developing larynx and trachea. So maybe this diagram will help you. You see, this is the developing larynx. So the thyroid gland is here. You can see it is ventral to it. It originated from here. So in this diagram, the thyroglosal duct has been obliterated. Then here, from here, the ultimobranchial body. Okay, the ultimobranchial body. So neurocrest cells usually invade the caudal portion of the fourth pharyngeal pouch to form the ultimobranchial body. Then from there, they will migrate to and invade the developing thyroid gland to form the parafollicular cells of the C cells. Remember, they produce calcitonin. Then, what is the fate of the thyroglosal duct? So the thyroglosal duct usually involutes, except for the cranial-most part, which becomes the foramen cecum. This foramen cecum between the oral and the pharyngeal part of the tongue is at the apex of the sulcus terminalis. Okay, here it is. That is where the thyroid gland started developing from. So we have answered the question, what is the developmental sequence? So maybe I should do that in a nutshell. So endodermal thickening at the root of the tongue, it becomes depressed to form the thyroglosal duct, which inclines forwards and downwards to lie ventral to the hyoid bone. Then it moves at the inferior border of the hyoid bone, it moves to the posterior of the hyoid bone, the retrohyoid position, and then inclines downwards and somewhat to the left of the midline. And when it reaches its definitive position in the 7th week of intrauterine life, it bifurcates, as shown here, and the bifids undergo the endoderm forming the bifids undergo endodermal proliferation to form the lateral lobes, which are joined by the isthmus. And remember that thyroid gland is the first endocrine gland to form in the body. And the thyroid gland is a privileged organ in the fetus because it will receive blood together with the brain. Yeah, so it is a privilege the blood supply must be a good one. The blood must be well oxygenated. So let's go to the last concept. What are some congenital anomalies? So we have one congenital anomaly is known as the ectopic thyroid gland. It is caused by defective migrative processes of the thyroid. It is named according to where they are located. So I said the thyroid, the thyroglosal duct start to form at the root of the tongue. So imagine if it does not descend and it lies and develops within the tongue. It will be known as the linguothyroid. Within the tongue, intralingual, above the hyoid bone, it will be known as the suprahyoid thyroid. Then beneath the hyoid and infrahyoid thyroid. This is its definitive position. Remember, the lateral lobes usually extend from the oblique line of the thyroid cartilage lamina up to the sixth tracheal ring. So if it does not form at its definitive position, it is an ectopic thyroid gland. Some of them, like the lingual one, might obstruct swallowing and hence need to be moved. So let's go to the other congenital anomaly. The other congenital anomaly is maybe I should show you an example of a ectopic. This is an example of a person with an ectopic thyroid gland. You can see where it is. This is not its definitive position. The definitive position should be somewhere here lower, but not there. So let's look at the last congenital anomaly, the thyroglosal cyst, caused by the failure of obliteration of the thyroglosal duct, leading to cyst formation. As you can see, this is a cyst. That one. You can also see here. Remember, we said that the thyroglosal duct will extend from the root of the tongue to where to the definitive position of the thyroid gland. So you can see along its course, it did not obliterate, and we formed a cyst, which is a lingual cyst there. Okay. So let's see those. And with that, we have answered the question. What is the embryonic origin? I've said site of origin, root of the tongue. Tissue of origin, we have said the endoderm will give you the follicular cells. The neurocrest will give you the parafollicular cells, and the mesenchyme will form the connective tissue. Then, developmental sequence I've discussed. I've stated two congenital anomalies, the ectopic thyroid gland and the thyroglosal cyst. We also have other congenital anomalies. Maybe you should look at them, such as the thyroglosal fistula, thyroglosal cyst, I've said, and also the thyroglosal duct sinus. So thank you, and subscribe for more content.